remains a relatively unrecognized and unpopular profession within Africa. By extension, the relevance of psychology to Africa's developmental challenges, such as group conflicts, poverty, corruption, poor governance, and poor education system, failing healthcare system, and other social issues that are antithetical to societal well-being remain unappreciated. And if we are to develop Africa and sustain such development, we must have a full grasp of the psychology of the people of this continent to be able to come up with indigenously relevant approaches, policies, and strategies for growth and development. Another implication of the state of development of psychology in Africa is that our psychology is lost in the global or universal psychology because we have not been able to fully focus on emphasizing our uniqueness through research and inserting our concepts into the global psychology and then investigating issues that are unique to us. Africans as a people have clear characteristics that have made notable scholars arrive at the consensus that there's an African personality. And the history that binds the people of this continent, the environment in which we live, cultural practices, and the challenges we have are diverse, yet similar. And our diversity and similarity calls for unique psychological exploration that is not lost within the global psychological template for studying and understanding human behavior. So it is true that the profession of psychology has its origin in the West and was pioneered by notable Westerners who, without doubt, had made outstanding contributions and provided insights into the understanding of human behavior. They are recognized to date and their works remain relevant, no disputing that. Also, the origin of psychology in Africa dates back to 1920, according to most of the sources I could find. So psychology is just about a century old in Africa, while it has been existing for much more in the Western world. These two reasons do not account for the state of development of psychology as a profession in Africa. I believe the main obstacle is how psychology has been practiced, researched, and disseminated among other polarities of Africa. So I'll be speaking on a few points based on my observation in my few years in academia. And these opinions are also influenced by the works of notable African psychologists like Nsa Maneng, and of course the mentors who I've had the privilege to work with. The first point I will talk about is need for an African psychology. Need for an African psychology. The need for an Afrocentric psychology. By Afrocentric psychology, I mean psychology about African peculiar issues, identifying and defining our variables, and devising unique ways of measuring our variables. The problem from my own observation is that psychology in Africa has maintained this Western-centric identity in terms of the variables investigated, the approach of investigation, and the outlet of dissemination of psychological knowledge. Why we are not, I don't understand why we are not focused on investigating issues like burial practices and rights in Africa, persistent corruption, husbands extending family hostility towards wives, like also maybe psychobiography of African leaders vis-a-vis self-enrichment, integrity, and patriotism, man characteristics of political office in Africa, African bonding and its cushioning effect on severe economic condition, and also possibly the insulator effect on political activism in Africa, and much more. Also, African psychologists have maintained their stand African psychologists have maintained their stand that there is an African personality, and the reason why we should focus on studying and publishing the psychology of Africans. However, we are yet to empirically assert the existence of an African personality through having a measure for it. Having such a measure, I believe, enables research to on how it correlates with Africa's social realities in different areas like leadership, ethics, and morality. Yes, there are personality structures that surprisingly replicate across cultures, such as the Big Five or Einstein scale. But the question is, in the research to validate these scales, how many African nations were included? The study by McRae in 2005 spanned 50 countries, of which only 4 African countries were included. And this is what I mean when I say African psychology getting lost in the global psychology. If personality can be culturally conditioned, then it means that there are likely to be culture-specific personality structures. And having national personality measure in African country will also aid research and practice of psychology in individual countries. For example, in South Africa, there is a personality inventory, and so many studies have been done to validate it among all ethnic groups. We do have some cultural practices that we would like to eradicate in Africa, and we need to understand the psychology behind them to effect any real change. So I'll go on to the approaches to Afrocentric psychology. One is that we need to make our own psychology interesting to us first. And one way by which we can do this is that we can increase the use of our native terms and concepts in research. We can coin variables in our native terms. We do know that we have unique and rich languages in our culture, in the African culture, and we need to use these native terms to make sure that our research is interesting even to us, to lay readership, and also to be able to arouse the curiosity of a foreign audience. Of course, we will have to give the meaning in English because we want to communicate, but we would have been able to insert our concepts into the global psychology vocabulary. For example, a colleague and I attempted to define and measure the concept of omoluabi in Yoruba culture. Omoluabi embodies a moral person in Yoruba parlance. We believe that it can be used to predict outcomes of social interaction and be psychologically explored for the child rearing practices that enhance it or the kind of environment that shape it. In essence, Omoluabi would become a psychological variable and be inserted into the global psychology vocabulary. African groups, we have a rich cultural heritage from which concepts or variables can be developed and studied. And to be able to coin and measure our variables, we need experts in research methods and psychometrics who will continue to develop measures of indigenous psychological variables. And well, this can also still be done with the scientific method as an approach. The scientific method emphasizes key necessities of measurability, objectivity, and replicability. We just need to find ways to identify, define, and measure our variables this way. That's all. Then another approach to an Afrocentric psychology is to discuss our realities within the context of traditional knowledge, such as proverbs and not just Western or scientific formulated theories. Proverbs, I can say, constitute the popular wisdom and tradition of a particular culture and gives a background to the values and shared beliefs of a community. Each African country with its diverse tribe has this traditional wisdom and proverbs with which people are socialized. For example, in an article titled Nigerian Social Identities and the Struggle for Survival, my co-author and I applied some Yoruba proverbs to the understanding of ethnic conflict and xenophobia in Nigeria. We use these proverbs to explain the factors that engineer and sustain intergroup hostility in Nigeria. There is a need for our traditional knowledge and theories, because what better way is there to understand our behaviors than within the context of theories that also emerged, theories that evolved with us and became our own worldview. These proverbs, they are theories that emerged from observation and experience, were tested through time and became established as wisdom and social guides and passed across generations. What is the work of a theory? A theory is basically an explanation of how certain things work. So let us put let's put forward our theories, theories of who we are and what we are to the world, and affirm our psychology. If we think deeply, some Western theories are captured in some of our local proverbs. I'm sorry, I might be citing some Yoruba proverbs only. I don't want to misinterpret the proverbs of other culture. Let me give some examples here. Okay, the first proverb you can see there can be a theory on social deviancy, and it literally means, in the absence of the elders in society, there is chaos. The father dies, the home is in disarray. This proverb emphasizes the importance of an authority figure, guidance, and rules and regulations to maintain order in a society, a home, or other forms of social grouping. The next proverb there speaks to the principle of parsimony in research. And that proverb literally translates as make comparison with only what fits. Peanut shell is not similar to the shell of melon. This proverb emphasizes the importance of simplicity in the explanations for phenomena. And this theories too, one under the social exchange and equity theory, which you can see on the screen. The first theory there states that literally means whatever measure one uses to give a flour is used to give one flour in return. And the second one says, give me so I can give it to you, cries the frog on the farm. Both proverbs emphasize that what you give into a relationship is what you get. I have some other theories there too, on the screen, as displayed to you. So our proverbs can be synthesized to explain, empirically test, and also offer explanation for behavior change. And for the last approach to an Afrocentric psychology, I think we also need reputable African-owned or African-based or African-focused journals. I'm sure some researchers have had a similar experience with me. When you send a paper out for review, a paper that focuses on a certain phenomenon peculiar to your country or society out for review, just from observing the reviewer's comments, you get the idea that the reviewer has no knowledge about your country or society. And let's face it, there is discrimination in the publication process. And being from an African country, when you're trying to present something peculiar to your country or society, it's sometimes difficult to sell to foreign journals. For example, I tried to publish an ethnocentrism scale, and I was asked, why develop an ethnocentrism scale when there are existing ethnocentrism scale? I replied that, well, the existing scales do not capture ethnocentrism in the way it manifests in my culture. And in another reply from the reviewer, they were still insisting that I do a convergent validity with existing ethnocentrism skills, even when I already replied that those existing skills do not capture the way ethnocentrism manifests in my country. Then some reviewers would ask you, why were the measures administered in English? And sometimes I think it couldn't have been too hard to just check if we actually speak English in Nigeria. And sometimes you also have the experience, you sign the paper out and you are asked if you'll be able to pay the APC charge, and you say no, and next thing you get an email that says your paper doesn't, or your article doesn't fit the scope of the journal. I've had this experience. So we need our own journals. For instance, I believe the African Psychology Union can float journals addressing different specializations and social issues, and build a reputation for itself. I am not saying such journals will give a soft landing for publications, but they will ensure a fairer review process and be open to accepting research on the psychological realities of Africans. Because for one, the administrators of this journal will have a vested interest in the publication of African research. If we have journals that are focused on African issues and owned by a body or organization that has with a vested interest in publishing research on African psychology, for example, one floated by PAPO, we will know that our papers will go to reviewers that have knowledge of African psychology. Even if they go to reviewers who have no knowledge of Africa, we'll ensure that the editors knows not to throw away our papers based on uninformed comment from reviewers. And then I also believe national psychological associations can float their journals and build reputations through publishing outstanding psychological research beyond national and continental outlets for research. And individuals and groups who also have the means to float reputable journals can also do so. Yes, we already have existing journals committed to publishing research on Africa, but some of them is so high, and we need African research to be able to be out there for everybody to have access to it. We know African researchers do not have as much, do not have access to as much funding for research as other researchers in the West. So why make the cost of publication so high that many people will not be able to afford it? Well, let's give some credit to some foreign journals that even offer a discount to authors from Africa. But the journal that stays African yet charges an amount impossible for many African researchers is in a currency whose value is 100 times our own. It's just ridiculous. So, individuals can charge whatever they want for their services, but journals by our national and perhaps continental associations are more likely to be by design in favor of us. I'm not advocating for not publishing in foreign journals. I'm just saying we should have journals for the numerous benefits that I have mentioned. Also, when we publish in foreign journals, well, any journal for that matter, it is like we package our products and then we pay for them to publish it, or we transfer copyrights to them, and then allow them to enjoy the returns on our effort because they sell to institutions and libraries and make money. The amount that is paid by African scholars to publish in foreign journals yearly, well, I don't have the statistics, but I'm sure it is staggering. So I believe we can put some of that money into our own journal. And as part of our identity, we can have our own unique signatures, such as the citation style of the PAPO or National Psychology Association. Now, I will talk about psychology and public policy in Africa as another way of looking inward. The extent to which National Psychology Association holds sway over public policies is minimal relative to other clients because we have not been able to fully demonstrate the practical relevance or applicability of psychological findings for social change and development strategies. Psychologists are needed for the assessment of public policies when the outcomes of such policies will affect or depend on human behavior. For instance, National Psychology Association can write and publish briefs on social issues. We can write briefs that can influence proceedings in court. We don't influence many public policies because psychology is not fully recognized as a profession that can help society grow. Some people still believe that psychology is about being able to read the mind of others, even in countries where psychology profession and practice is more advanced, such as in South Africa. It shows that the understanding of psychology needs to be brought to lay people. Publish research that the ordinary person cannot understand or appreciate its relevance. We need to publish lay reviews of our findings and send unsolicited reports of our findings to societal institutions and bodies like the government, like the African Union, WHO, UNICEF, that organizations that could utilize our findings. So we can take advantage of various social media platforms, even TikTok, to publicize African psychological knowledge to meet the evolving needs of our society. We also need to establish where none exist and also strengthen where they already exist, National Psychology Association. This gives us an identity, it emphasizes our resolve, and we can use this platform to push for our relevance in the society. We need to sell psychology as just more than clinical psychology or psychology of the mind or of mental problems, and correct the wrong notion of psychology in the minds of people. I've had the opportunity to reside in another African country beyond my own, Nigeria, and I've seen similar misconceptions about psychology. So to do this, I think we need more community engagement programs to showcase psychology. It is not enough to have an awareness talk or walk by psychologists on World Mental Health Day or Suicide Day. We have to constantly engage our societies, sell psychology to them, and apply psychology to solving social problems. For instance, in Zimbabwe, I have that displayed on the screen. Due to the shortage of psychiatrists in a population with a high prevalence of mental health challenges, the psychiatrists decided to initiate a therapy program which involved training grandmothers in talk therapy. This kind of initiative on the part of African psychologists can boost its recognition and relevance. Then we must also be able to conduct research with a strong policy focus. Thus, our concern should be how our research could be used to build models or strategies to effect real changes in our society. The next point I have here is that African psychology researchers and academics should cite each other. We need to cite each other's studies. First, I will acknowledge that sometimes you search for previous studies on what you're working on and you don't find exactly what you're looking for. And then some people also have the perception that the number of foreign studies the site influences the status of their paper and is an indication of how much hard work they have put into that paper. Yes, there's nothing wrong with citing foreign studies. For instance, it can point to the cross-cultural relevance of the of certain phenomena in one's findings, and if one's findings are corroborated by findings from foreign studies. I also believe that the studies of other researchers in our society gives more credence to our findings than foreign studies. I also know there is the issue of the quality of some of the articles we find in our climb. But whenever possible, I believe we should cite each other's work and contribute to inserting our psychology into global psychological knowledge. When we continue to cite ourselves, we begin to establish validity for our concepts, our methods, our theories that have been inserted into the global psychology literature. Next point I have here is the publish or perish mantra in some African universities. And this is another problem. Research and publication is the best strategy to draw recognition to African psychology. However, the publish or perish mantra in some African universities has led to shoddy publications, disinterest in research, and publication in predatory journals. Publishing in high-index journals takes time. It takes time to find reviewers. Reviewers take their time to review, and editors also take their time. So the link between publication and promotion sometimes leads to hastily put together articles and lazy studies. And disinterest in research is also sometimes as a result of poor funding or lack of funding for research. In my discussion with some of my colleagues and mentors in the academia, I've come to agree that we need to look for other ways of assessing scholarship beyond the number of publications. For example, what is the impact of research in terms of how the researcher has used the finding to improve the community? If through research, a researcher finds that, for example, that self-esteem among students in that community is related to academic performance, for example, it's not important that such researcher also returns to that community to see if he or she can initiate an intervention program to improve self-esteem among students in that community. In this way, we are making the people, the in quote, psychology ignorant people, aware of psychology and its relevance. And let other specialties like the industrial organizational psychologists, they can design models of organizational development and engage organizations to test their models. And let other psychologists, developmental psychologists, for example, develop models of child learning, which can be tested and proposed for incorporation into the curriculum. The next point I have here is cross-country research collaborations as a path towards Africanism. African countries have similar challenges to their development: poor governance, ethnic conflict, corruption affect most African countries. Cross-border research to identify similarities and differences in the psychological underpinnings of Africa's development challenges is important. Such research can help develop country-specific and continent general models and strategies for addressing our challenges. Next point I have here is that psychological research on Africans sometimes conducted by foreigners. Research findings from studies conducted by African researchers should dominate the literature on African psychology. Sometimes in the process of research, when I'm seeking information on a particular phenomenon, it amuses me or sometimes hurts me that the number of, the authors of the information I'm seeking are foreigners. I mostly experience this when I'm looking for information on Africa's colonization, leadership, and future development. I've come across outstanding studies, I must admit, on group relations in Nigeria and other African countries that were done by foreigners. This made me wonder, why are we not the ones writing and researching ourselves? When I read these articles, it sometimes seems to me like those authors assume that Africans are not conscious of their realities and that only Westerners observing them from a distance could explain our psychology. I'm not saying the findings are wrong or that the thesis of some of these articles have no truth to them, but who is in a better position of understanding to discuss Africans, to research Africans and have a unique understanding of findings? I still say we only can be experts on ourselves, our realities, and our psychology. Also, looking inwards, also includes having African psychological surveys and national psychological surveys. National surveys provide data on the attitude, beliefs, and behavioral pattern of a population and can help identify changing patterns in the society. Data collection process of research can be tedious and may require a lot of human and financial resources to achieve. Need national surveys on psychological variables. Such surveys provide readily available data for research, enables the researchers to bypass the stage of data collection. And the national surveys also provide researchers with the data to identify and predict trends in social issues. In addition to national surveys, there ought to be continental surveys, which provides like a wider scope for investigating issues that are central to Africa and for country comparison too. Next, I also believe as a way of looking inwards, we should have a repository of African psychology researchers and academics. There's a need for a database of psychology researchers and academics, their contacts, affiliations, specializations, research interests, and a link to their published works. This can encourage national and international collaborations as people can search for academics or researchers in a particular field and contact them. And it will also be a platform to help African and foreign researchers identify researchers they would like to consult or collaborate with. Another important point for looking inwards to improve the relevance of psychology for Africa's development is that we need to eliminate sibling rivalry among psychology subdivisions and invent new areas of specialization. There's sibling rivalry among psychology subdivisions. It is the case of the perceived superiority of one specialization over others. And this needs to stop if there is to be a concerted effort to build national psychological associations. Also, subdivisions have gone beyond what we currently have in Africa. We need to create more specializations that are peculiar to us and define their content and modalities of investigation of human behaviors. For example, I think we should have food security psychology, for example. We produce different kinds of crop in Africa, and according to a 2022 UN report and some other reports, African countries like Ethiopia, Nigeria, Liberia, DRC, and Central African Republic are experiencing severe hunger. In another report, it's also said that Africa could be 2 to 3 times more productive if it intensified its agricultural productivity. Some of the factors that could improve yields are improved seeds, biotechnology research, fertilizers, improved storage, and so on. While financial resources is cited as a major deterrent to the growth and expansion of agriculture in Africa, a focus of the food security psychologists is also the receptivity towards mechanized farming, biotechnology, and the likes. From empirical and anecdotal evidence, I think Africans are quick to subscribe to the conspiracy theories and unfounded claims about some plans to kill Africans and cancer-causing foods and all that. If we had to increase agricultural productivity to quell food insecurity in Africa, the attitude of Africans towards what is needed to improve productivity is an important focus of studying. And another specialization could be religion psychology. I know this is already in the purview of some areas of specialization, but I think the way religion has been used to limit the personal agency of Africans for their actions and life outcomes is alarming. A mind that is beclouded by religious or spiritual explanations for every event may not be receptive to or implement ideas that advance the growth of the self and the society. And African Union, for example, emphasizes developing Africa through the concerted effort of Africans. We as Africans, we need to then have, we need to have, if we have to achieve this aim of the African Union, we need Africans that are achievement motivated and that take responsibility for their life outcomes. And new specializations also can help us to attract more students and create more relevance for psychology and create more jobs. So in conclusion, I know the germane questions or sentiments running through the minds of most people listening is that these are just theories. How do we transform these ideas into reality? I think it behoves every African psychologist to do more than they are currently doing. Yes, finance is a major obstacle to development in Africa, and financial resources are needed to actualize some of the suggestions that I have made. Nevertheless, some scholars have access to finance more than others do, and there's nothing wrong with also starting small. Making psychology relevant to the public and public policy also increases our chance of getting funding for our scholarly works. Collaborations between scholars can help to pool more resources for impactful research. We all need to contribute to the understanding, publication, and affirmation of our psychology. So I will stop there. Thank you for listening.